So why do we have general meetings? This is a real question for you guys. Looking for answers.
To get things done, to make sure that everybody has their voice heard when you're in the meeting.
Perfect. So, you know, our meetings, our general meetings, really the fact is we are not, it is not our money. You know, we have to do what our members want us to do. So that is our way of making sure that they're informed and they're making those decisions. So meetings are held for members to make the decisions that direct the actions of the association and to be kept informed of the progress and business being conducted on their behalf. The members direct all decisions by approving everything from bylaws to budgets and activities. Okay, so that's why it's so important to make sure that we're having our three, all of us have at least 3 that we need to do during the year. Just a side note, only members can participate in a meeting. So while non-members are able to attend and you know, we welcome it and we want everyone to make sure that they're there, they cannot make motions, debate, or vote. There's 3 different meeting groups. So you have your membership, which is your general meeting. Those are the ones that in your bylaws, and I'm hoping that's a whole different class, but bylaws are extremely important and you need to make sure that you read them all. But in those bylaws, it states how many general meetings you need to have. Usually it's 3. You need to do in August, January-ish, and April, May for elections. In the meetings, the members of the association, those who have paid their dues, direct the work of the association. The executive board, which is your group, the executive board consists of the elected and appointed officers, the principal, and others listed in the bylaws. So a lot of us have VPs, some of us have teacher reps, stuff like that. Those are all included in there. Usually the standing committee chairs are executive board members, and the executive board may also include council delegates, teacher or faculty representatives, student representatives, and others. So that is, just keep that in mind. I've been getting a lot of questions about who's supposed to vote, who's not supposed to vote, and stuff like that. So when you're having your monthly meetings, that is your executive board. Committees. There are 2 types of committees that exist in PTA. There's your standing committee, which is a committee whose work is ongoing throughout the year. A special committee is a committee with a specific task, and the committee is dissolved once that task has been completed. So an example of that, I think it's blocking it, but an example of that, a program committee works year-round. So if you have membership programs, different things that you have all year, that is your standing committee. Special committees are nominating committees, bylaws committee, if you create one just specifically for bylaws, budget committee, stuff like that. Types of meetings. These are also in your bylaws. Regular meetings, those are the meetings that you have membership meetings set up by the bylaws, and the executive board meetings are set up at the beginning of the year. So for example, your regular meetings are your monthly meetings and your general meetings. You can call a special meeting. I don't know why my writing got all messed up, but you can call special meetings as president of the board. In the bylaws, it will state how much time in advance they will need. It varies. Some of them say 4 days, some of them say 7 days, but you do have that option of calling special meetings in case of an emergency that you need to vote on something. Motions. Everyone loves motions. So if you guys please feel free to unmute yourselves if you guys have questions as we go through this. I know that motions are one of those things that we do, but we don't like and stuff like that. So just, this is the simplest way that I could find to kind of explain it. So somebody rises, you know, if they want to make a motion from the floor, or if you're doing it virtually and you have a motion form, they rise to address the chair, Mr. President, Ms. Chairman, however you prefer. And then you have to recognize them. So you have to say, okay, yes, you know, Mr. Jones, And then they have to state it a specific way. So they're supposed to say, I move that, and then state the motion. If it is a member stating a motion, you do need a second. If the motion is coming from an executive, from the executive committee or a chair of a committee, you do not need a second, because it is assumed that it is by the group. The group is in the motion. So you need, as chair, you have to repeat the motion. So you have to say, the motion has been made and seconded that, blah, 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 blah. And then you can usually ask that person that's making the motion if they would like to speak to their motion. And then you can open it up for discussion if discussion is needed. Then you put it as a question. So you have to restate the question, the motion, and then they can go ahead and vote. And then you announce the vote and say it carried or it did not carry. Questions on motions?
I have one.
Shoot.
If, when the motions come along, is that also for things like the budget?
Yes. So the treasurer will move to approve the budget.
Okay.
So when she's, I'm gonna show you that in a couple, I think like 3 more slides. But okay. The treasurer, when you say, okay, next up in our agenda is the budget, and then the treasurer will go ahead and say, I move to approve the budget for year 2020, 2021. Okay. And, and since it's coming from the treasurer, you do not need a second. You can open it up for discussion. People can ask questions, but then you would go ahead and do a vote.
So if someone made a motion to change something in the budget, that's when we would do that whole process right there.
Yes.
So we wouldn't present 2 different budgets. It would be the one budget that the budget committee had done. And then if someone is wanting to make a change, then they have to go through the process of motioning and seconding and all in discussion and all that.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hey, Shelly, there's
Yeah.
a request to go back to the motion screen, if you would.
Y'all asking me to do complicated stuff? I don't know how to go back. Oh, hey, there you go. A simple back button, apparently. I can move this out of your way. And I will make sure to share our PowerPoints and stuff. So any other questions on motions? I know it's one of those things that we have to do as presidents, but we absolutely do not like it because it is way more work than we wish it was. All right. Are we good? You want me to move on? No other questions? Can't see your faces, so I'm just gonna. Okay. Okay, so this is your sample agenda. For your first general meeting, most local units need to do their budget. You need to present your audit. So if you look under new business, and this is something that honestly it differs depending on who's doing the agenda. I tend to move things around. So I have put audit and budget adoption under action items. That is okay. You can have an action items if you want to have an action items in there. It's not a huge deal. The point of the agenda is to make sure that you actually have what you will be discussing on there. So you should have an agenda at every board meeting. Say it again, every board meeting. I know it's a pain, but every board meeting you should have an agenda. And then for your general meetings, you should have an agenda. If you have an executive committee meetings, you also need to have an agenda. Okay, because if anything that you're keeping minutes for, or you're making decisions, you need to have an agenda. And it doesn't have to be super, super complicated. Just make sure that you put whatever business you want to accomplish on there, just to keep everything moving along. So this is a sample script. So this goes to the question that was asked earlier. So when you call the meeting to order, you make sure that you state the time, because the treasurer, the secretary, has to keep track of the time that the meeting starts. So make sure you state the time, and then you have to make sure that you have quorum. If you do not have quorum, then you cannot make any voting or make any decisions. So if you do not have quorum, you guys can discuss and you can set up a time to meet again, but you cannot vote on any items. So you need to make sure you have quorum. You can check your bylaws to see how many people you need for quorum. In a general meeting, usually the minimum is 10. So you can check your bylaws. A quorum for your executive board meetings, your monthly meetings, would be one more than half. So if you have 12 board members, then you need 7 to be in attendance. Okay? So you go ahead and welcome them, thank you for coming, all that good stuff. Sometimes people do the Pledge of Allegiance. You introduce your executive committee, because this may be the first time that they're meeting them. Especially with it being virtual, you may want to just do a slide of all of their faces. Just make it easier for you. Then you have to go ahead, if you have any guests, introduce your guests, and then your minutes. So your general meeting minutes are only for your general meeting. So today, when we have our general meeting for the county, I am approving the minutes of our last general meeting, not the minutes of our executive board meeting. Did we get that? I know we've had discussion about that before.
Shelly?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question about quorum?
Mm-hmm.
For the general meeting, can you count your exec board is that part of your quorum, or are you just looking for membership?
For your general meeting?
Yeah.
Yes, your executive board will count.
So technically, if none of your members show up, only your exec board shows up, and it's more than whatever your quorum is, it technically would be a general meeting, as long as you followed all of the...
Yes, as long as you promoted it and made sure that it was posted,
Right.
in whatever amount of time it tells you in your bylaws that you need to post it by.
Right.
And if no members show up, I mean, that's super sad.
Yes.
and that's really depressing. That's super sad. But yes, technically you would be able to make those decisions and go ahead and vote.
Perfect. Thank you.
But try to get them. Okay. We want to So yeah, and then you would approve the minutes for the last meeting that is the same meeting that you are currently doing. Okay. So, and then if there's no corrections, wonderful, you move on. If there are corrections, you go ahead and approve as corrected. The president's report, usually you take this time to kind of go over the mission. It's really a great idea to always mention the mission of PTA, because our mission is not to fundraise or to buy, pretty things. It is to advocate for our kids and make sure that they're getting what they deserve and what they need. Treasurer's report. So then you mentioned, I will now ask our treasurer to present the treasurer's report. Every single board meeting that you have with your executive board. So if you have to have one monthly. Every single meeting, your treasurer should be providing a treasurer's report. I should have posted what it should look like, but your treasurer's report should include starting balance, income, and it should be itemized based on your budget. So for example, if it's t-shirts, if you had, $200 in t-shirts, $150 in memberships, $30 in masks, that should show for the income and then have a total income.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Did you say at every board meeting, or do you do this at the general meetings also?
Both.
Okay, thanks.
Both. The treasurer's report for the general meeting will be from the last general meeting. Does that make sense? So if you haven't had a meeting in 3 months, then your treasurer's report for your general meeting will be 3 months total.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. So you have your income, your expenses, same thing. And then you have to have your total expenses and then your ending balance. So all those numbers need to be there for it to be like a valid treasurer's report. And the treasurers are getting this training from Mary. So please make sure that you hold them accountable, because that is the money of the association. You know, it is not you being a bad person if you're like, hey, about your treasurer's report, you know, we need that for our meeting. That is okay. That's part of your job as being president. And also to mention real quick, I know I've gotten a couple people mentioning that we don't have a VP trainings. Your vice presidents, I don't know if I have any that are here because I can't see your faces, but vice presidents have to be prepared to become president at any given time. So especially now with everything that we have going on, let's say the president gets sick, you know, and you're not feeling well, and honestly, a general meeting is the last thing on your mind. The vice president would be the one stepping in and presiding over the meeting. So everything that we go over, please share it with your vice presidents, especially your first vice president, because you really don't know. I mean, it's, you know, that's our reality right now. We need to make sure that they are prepared in case, like with even my VP, I'm copying her on everything and making sure that she is as up to date and knows all the craziness that I have going on my end. So if something does happen, she's able to take over. Okay, so just make sure, let your VPs know that although it doesn't sound like it is specifically for VPs, they really do need to know how to run a meeting and all of that stuff. So new business.
Hey, Shelly.
Yeah.
Sorry. We have another question in the chat box.
Okay.
It says, how do we know if everyone attending is a member in order to make quorum? We only have 4 executive board members, so we need 6 members to show up in order to make quorum. What if it's a student member? Does that count?
We interrupt your viewing to bring you this commercial message. Hello everyone. During this training, there was a question that came up regarding student members and the ability to vote. To make sure that you have the most up-to-date and accurate information, we did provide clarification, and we want to make sure that it's shared during this training so that everyone is all set and ready to go. So the clarification is that student members do have voting privileges at any meeting, such as the board meetings, the general meetings, or the executive committee if they were to serve on such a position. However, unless they are the age of 18 or higher, they do not count towards quorum. And your quorum is the amount of numbers that you need to conduct business. So that's just the clarification. If you have any questions, please let us know. Thank you, and you may now resume your regularly scheduled programming.
If you do, we're doing things virtually. So one of the things that you can do is just have them sign up ahead of time, and your secretary would be the one that would be checking quorum. So she should have a list of your members and check it with who is attending. Sometimes it takes a little bit extra time because it's virtual. We're having to adjust, but your secretary should be the one checking quorum. So as you are saying, hi, welcome to come, I'm glad you came and all that stuff, she should be checking against your membership list. Okay, and honestly, if you put it out there that you need to make quorum, usually there's those parents that like kind of feel bad for you and they'll come. Especially now that it's virtual, I've seen a lot of our members are actually showing up more because they don't have to worry about getting a babysitter or getting the kids dressed again to bring them back out of the house to go back to a meeting at school. So you might actually be able to, you might be fine. So new business, you have to file the audit report. So although we aren't, we're not doing a major thing with the audit. Once the audit is done, we're good and we're happy. You do have to, let them know that an audit was done and that it was good, and you have to file it. Okay. Actually, that's exactly what's going on down here. So under new business over here, it's the annual audit report. The annual audit financial report for the year ended blah, 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 blah. This was completed over the summer. The books were found to be correct and in good order. And then I moved to adopt the audit report. So that's something that the treasurer would say. So that goes to your question. I will send this script out. I have posted it in a couple places, but I will be sending it out again since I'll have all your emails. Since Tristan is sending me that email, that makes it easier. So, and then this would be a move. So it has been moved that the audit report of the 2000 whatever year be adopted. And then it says on there too, need a second from the floor if the motion is not coming from committee or executive board. So just keep that in mind. Treasurer's report represents the proposed budget. Speak to material line items. So just make sure when you are doing your general meetings, the treasurer presents the report, but then she should go through it a little bit so that those that may not understand what's happening have a little bit better of understanding. So go ahead and do that. And then she makes a motion to approve the budget, and you go ahead and you can approve that. And then at this point, you can ask the principal if they want to speak. At my local unit years ago, I did have the principal speak. That was a good chance for her to kind of talk to some of the people that she wasn't normally in front of. So, and they appreciate it. So just ask them if they would like to speak, and then you do announcements, and then you adjourn. Make sure again that you state what time you're adjourning so that the secretary can keep track of the the time. Money. I wanted to go over money real quick. I'm getting close. Okay. So we all have fiduciary responsibility. Fiduciary responsibility in a PTA means the executive board members act as trustees of the organization's assets and must exercise due diligence to oversee that the organization is well managed and that its financial situation remains sound. So what that means in a nutshell is, be cognizant of what you're spending money on and make sure that you're doing it based on the PTA mission. So the budget creates the framework for program management and overall administrative decisions. The executive board verifies that all filing requirements and tax obligations are completed. So as you know, we are a 501c3 organization. So we have IRS rules that we need to follow. We have county rules that we need to follow. There are quite a few requirements. And although a lot of times you see that in the treasurer's presentations, as presidents, we should also be aware of those requirements and make sure that we are reminding them just in case and making sure that we're meeting those deadlines. The treasurer is legally responsible for all the funds of the association. However, the officers of the association are elected by the members and are equally responsible. And the reality is, 3 of us are on the bank accounts. Please remember that. You have to have 3 people on the bank accounts, 3 signers. But so we are all responsible if something does happen to that money. So just make sure that it is not your main responsibility to keep track of the money, but please be aware of what's happening and what's due and what's going on, because the reality is we are responsible for everything that happens in our board. So budget basics. An approved budget must be in place at all times in order for expenditures to be made and fundraisers to be conducted. Therefore, a budget is developed and adopted at the beginning of the year. This budget is adopted at the first general meeting of the association. So your budgets, remember, you also have interim funds. So your interim funds will get you from the last day of school until your first general meeting. Usually we have those general meetings in August, maybe September, but that's when you switch over to the new budget. So if it is not in your interim funds, and I've had a lot of these questions lately, if it is not in your interim funds and you haven't had your budget meeting yet, your first general meeting, you cannot spend that money, okay? Because it has not been approved. Fundraising. All funds raised by the PTA belong to the PTA. PTA must manage the funds with the approval of the members. PTA funds may not be commingled with the funds of the school or any other entity. The primary emphasis in PTA should focus upon the promotion of the purposes. The real working capital of a PTA lies in its members, not the treasury. Fundraising is not a primary focus of PTA. When deciding whether to expend funds, always look to the mission and purposes. So that's pretty much what I just said. Just make sure that you're spending money wisely, especially this year. With us not being able to do our spring fundraisers and stuff like that, a lot of our PTAs are a little bit more strapped for cash. And then just a quick note, only the president is authorized to sign contracts. Don't just sign contracts without your approval of your board. That is something that you need to make sure that you're discussing with your board and getting it approved. But only the president can sign the contracts of anything that you're getting into. This is an example of a budget. Try not to be too specific with your programs. Especially this year, we're going to have to be moving things around quite a bit. So if you leave it a little bit less specific, it gives you more wiggle room if something isn't able to happen and you have to make it, if it has to turn into something different. So just keep that in mind. And that's pretty much it. How much time I have? Ooh, I have time for questions. So I'm going to stop sharing so I can see faces.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Does everything have to be voted for in a general meeting? Are there things that can be voted on just at the board level?
Yes. So you can, at the board level, you would do your standing rules if you have standing rules. You would do like the makeup of your board, approving committee chairs. But line items, like specifically for your budget, would be a general membership approval.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Does that answer?
Yeah, so generally, what we would be voting on in a general meeting would just be how to use money.
How to use money. And then if you looked at so in your budget, it will show not just the money, but also what programs you're doing. So
Right.
there's a chance where the members can say, hey, so I see you're spending this much on fifth graders. What about our fourth and third or whatever the case is? So they have a say in essentially everything.
Okay.
So we have to take that into account, and we need to make sure that when we are creating our budgets, we are making it fair. So it should be across the board, fair for everyone. And when you're fundraising, for every fundraiser, you have to have 3 givebacks.
Right.
A giveback does not have to be something that you spend a lot of money on. It can be something free. I mean, if you get donations and you give something back to the kids or to the teachers, that counts as a giveback. Okay, so it doesn't have to be a monetary giveback. Any other questions?
I have one question.
Yeah.
I know that at the Florida conference over the summer, it had said that in the new bylaw change that general meetings, at least 2 of them can be virtual and 1 of them has to be in person.
Yes.
Is that the same for board meetings as well?
Board meetings can be totally virtual.
Okay. Because most of 75% of my board are connect or virtual this year.
Yeah.
So I think virtual is literally the only way we're going to be able to get everyone together. So
Yeah.
just want to make sure that was okay.
Yeah, board meetings can be virtual, so you're fine with that. The general meetings, it's on there that it's only 2, and then the 1 has to be in person. But just keep that in mind that if you do the virtuals now, do the virtual now, and then another virtual in January. So then come April, May, if things are better and we can meet, then great. But if things are not better, then most likely the board of directors for Florida will do another exception where we did last year and say, okay, guys, still a mess. You guys can go virtual.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Shirley, I've got a hard question.
Um,
I asked you this question before, and I think you said you needed to look into it.
mhm.
But so my board, or our general meeting won't be until next month, but we already have, I don't know, 70 members on our PTA. But because paying the dues is not in our interim funds, we can't actually pay that yet. We have to have our meeting first, correct?
Mhm.
So
So-
we started getting members in last month? What month? August. So we started getting members in July. So we haven't paid for July and we haven't paid for August as of yet. And we wouldn't be able to do it until after our general meeting in September. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that one actually depends who you talk to. I did check and there's different opinions. So if you have already set up Stripe, you can go ahead and pay if you need to. The fact of the matter is there's really the membership would not be able to deny that payment because those are your membership dues. You know what I mean? If
Okay.
you were paying something else, as far as like if you were paying for a food truck, that's a little bit different because that's an option. But your membership dues, really, that's no option. I mean, that needs to get paid regardless. And the membership really, although they are approving the budget, will not be able to say, oh no, I don't want to pay $3.50 to Florida. I want to give them $2. So yeah, you can go ahead and pay. That was one of those things I checked on it and I was like, okay, everyone has different opinions on this. So it's fun. All right. If you guys have any other questions, please reach out. My email is president@sccpta.com. Rachel gave us emails, so it makes it super simple now. So president@sccpta.com, okay? Thanks, everyone.